Okay, well, welcome everyone. It is noon, so we will go ahead and get started. My name is Molly Edwards. I work in the Lawrenceville Alumni Office, and I'm so excited to welcome Jennifer Parnell, a history teacher and our AI coordinator here at Lawrenceville. And she's going to share how the school is engaging with AI, both in the classroom and beyond. She has done an incredible amount of work and research on this topic. So I'm so excited to hand it over to Jen. We also have one of her students, Jonathan Yang, from the class of 25, who has been working with her. He'll share some of his experiences as a student working in AI as well. Just a note of norms, please feel free to use the Q&A box at any time during the presentation to submit a question. We may not answer it right away, but we will try to get to as many of the questions as possible throughout today's presentation. So without further delay, I will hand it over to Jen. Thank you so much.
Okay. I guess it's afternoon now. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jennifer Parnell. I teach history at the Lawrenceville School, as Molly mentioned, and I've also I guess, sort of ended up in a role of helping to coordinate some AI efforts at Lawrenceville, not through any technical expertise whatsoever. I have no degrees in computer science or machine learning. I just became fascinated with the technology when it emerged in November 22, like everybody, because it's just such a jump. And at least for me, it's been really exciting at this point in my life to sort of still be learning so many new things. And so it's great to have that opportunity at Lawrenceville. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that I can go into a quick little presentation here. And I'm going to move that down, go to slideshow. Okay, so I have some slides that go through sort of where we are at Lawrenceville right now and where it is we'd like to go. I have a student who, even though he has apparently 2 tests or 2 papers due this afternoon, he's gonna grace us with some of his words of wisdom. And so we're excited to share with you kind of what's going on campus, and maybe learn from some of you through questions where you might see Lawrenceville going and how we can start to do this in a very collaborative way. We have some great alumni that are involved in AI out in the world, and we'd love to get more of our students working with the alumni. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity to speak today. Let's go right ahead. So a quick set of goals here. We really want, by the end of this, for you to have an understanding of how we approach and envision AI at Lawrenceville. I'd like for participants to have an opportunity to at least begin to explore some of the challenges and opportunities for AI, both with students and faculty. I'd like to share some of the work we're doing on campus with AI, and then hopefully answer some questions. One of the things I guess that for us is sort of a basic, sort of, I guess like a baseline for this is that we have to all come into this with the idea that AI is a paradigm shift. We can't control developments in this space. We can't ignore that impacts have already arrived, and we have to accept that continual learning will be the norm from here on out. By the time I give this presentation, parts of it will already be obsolete, even though I've updated it just a few minutes ago. And I think that is both exciting and terrifying for a lot of people. And I think that one of the most important things is for our students, this is a critically important topic. So just a quick little technology basis. I'm not sure what the level of experience is with the audience, but I did just want to go over how we think about AI on campus. And I guess the best definition that I've seen is that it describes algorithms. It uses algorithms that create new content, whether that is audio, code, images, text, a simulation, or a video. And recent breakthroughs, especially within the last 6 months, have the potential to really drastically change the way we approach content creation. AI uses, it's sort of difficult to describe. I would say that it uses algebraic structures to represent language, calculus to optimize its understanding and generation of language, and computational algorithms to scale these processes to handle large volumes of data efficiently. All of these are then applied to what's known as natural language processing. And I guess in summary, the neural networks, the synthetic networks of artificial intelligence work by simulating a simplified, abstracted version of the brain's neural networks and neural structure and learning processes. And many of the original AIs pre-2022 learned by considering examples, generally with being trained on large data sets. Is it creating new knowledge? In some ways it is. It's creating knowledge that hasn't existed before, but a lot of times it's based on a training set. One of the bigger differences in AI 2022 versus AI today is that it's grown now from models that learn from data sets to models that can basically teach themselves without human direction. They can now combine complex skills. They're no longer limited to sort of predictive text models, almost a stochastic parrot kind of experience. And they are now not just classifying data, but creating new images, new text, new video, that are really revolutionary and represent a step forward. What makes AI transformational? And I'm not going to read all the things on this screen, except for really to point to a couple of things that are important. Originally, ChatGPT, which is the one that sort of took the world by storm in November of 22, was trained on a massive data set. You can see here it says 45 terabytes of data, which is about 8 million pages of text. At that time, it went almost immediately to 180 million users. As of just yesterday, IBM estimates that there's 4 billion users. 77% of all global companies are now incorporating some form of AI, based on another IBM survey. And so we have an explosion in the market that's represented also in the Wall Street Journal valuation. By 2030, we expect this to be a 1.3 trillion valuation, which is just staggering growth. The development costs for some of these are also important to consider. To develop a large language model like ChatGPT can require development costs exceeding $1 billion. So why is it so controversial, or what are some of the issues that we're looking at in terms of what makes people both afraid of it and skeptical about its use? On the left-hand side here, we have sort of the older models, and what you can look at what data was fed into AI. We could look at the models, and what the output was easily seen. It was easily visible. The entire model was very transparent. We knew why the output was emerging from that particular computer process. What we're seeing now in the newer versions of AI that have come out since 2022 is that they're much more efficient, they're much faster, but they're significantly more opaque. We have an understanding that they're achieving success, but we don't necessarily understand exactly how some of those models are learning in the way that we understood it before. And so for a lot of people, that makes it very much of a concern. And it sort of should, this idea that we're moving from transparency to opacity is difficult, because right now we can't have both simultaneously. So the question is sort of, we as a society and we as a campus and we as communities of learners, we need to decide whether we're going to choose sort of the transparent idea of AI, or whether we're going to move towards this opacity, which may have implications that we can't necessarily predict or completely understand. One of the things that makes it ubiquitous for our students and our faculty is this idea that it's completely embedded in what you do. It's not just embedded in terms of that when you sign into Maps, it now shows you where you're going, or you use it as a search function. But when you open up a Google Doc, like I did this one yesterday, it used to just have a little button that said, help me write. Now, this particular version understands that typically I'm writing either a calendar event draft, an email draft, or meeting notes. And so it's anticipating what my needs are. And that is sort of a newer level. It's increasingly embedded in the technology. It's increasingly embedded in the next generation of PCs. AI-capable laptops are coming from both Dell and HP in 2024. What can it do well? Most of this is not news to people. It can write almost anything that you would like. It can write in a different language. It can generate images. It can respond to feedback. It can edit. It can talk to you in Spanish or French or Mandarin or any of the other many languages that it's been trained on. Almost any of the AIs have the ability to extract keywords and explain ideas in really simple terms. The other thing that's gotten a tremendous amount of media attention is what AI can do that is almost better or more advanced than what humans can do. It can pass bar exams. It can pass final exams, AP tests. It can plan travel for you, plan dinners, write emails, write blog posts. It can write college application essays. It can write college recommendation letters. There's one of my favorites is Otter AI, which you can use to summarize meetings with notes and key points in real time. So it has a tremendous amount of skill that can be applied across a wide range of activities. The latest developments, and this is where it gets really interesting and exciting, a number of the newest versions of Claude or ChatGPT can now sort of respond to criticism of itself. It can now determine and assess its own ability to complete different tasks. It can develop code to answer its own questions. So if you don't know how to code particularly well, you can ask it to write the code to answer a particular prompt that you would like to see it. And so what it's becoming is more and more user-friendly with natural language. It can now create new content from existing content, which is really remarkable in terms of image and video. There are now a number of, when we're talking about multi-agent systems, we have two AIs can communicate with one another. And you can now ask it to sort of write its own prompts. If you don't know how to prompt AI, you can say, can you please suggest, ChatGPT, what type of prompt I should write to get this particular this particular event, this particular result that I'm looking for. And so what we saw originally in November of 22, prompt engineering is a huge skill. Now that's starting to drift away as the models themselves become better at writing their own code and their own prompts. So tremendously exciting, slightly alarming for some people as well. It still can't do everything well. It's not very good with related rates for calculus. It can't write about personal events in your life unless you tell it what to write. It's not accurate or truthful all the time. Can't feel empathy. It can tell you what a picture of a cat looks like. It can create an image of a cat if you say, please make an image of a cat. But obviously it doesn't have an innate understanding of what a cat is or how a cat might act. It can't quote effectively from sources, although it can paraphrase from sources. So for a lot of our students writing papers, it's helpful as long as it doesn't have to actually quote from the sources. The hallucination rates, which is what we call those inaccurate responses, are declining rapidly. Claude 3, which is one of the more recent versions that just came out from Anthropic, achieved an 86.8 accuracy rate, which is in terms of like skills and recall and precision benchmarks. And so that now is at a level of accuracy that's pretty high. The higher paid versions of Claude 3 are at a 99% accuracy rate. And so it's now getting to the point where it can outperform human forecasting. And in some cases that it can't outperform, at least it can augment human performances. One of course, the main issue is that it's relying on data that it may not have permission to use. I think everyone has seen the New York Times lawsuits against OpenAI saying that OpenAI has has inappropriately scraped its data to train the models. And so now what some of the models are doing is they are creating synthetic data to train themselves. And so one of the amazing things about this is that each time it seems to hit a hurdle, it really makes another jump, the technology, which at least in my mind is tremendously exciting. And so at Lawrenceville, just sort of to end this little technology session, there's two major issues that a lot of teachers and students are grappling with, and administrators as well. First of all, is it a technology that we should embrace, and to what extent? And how can Lawrenceville stay current with this? Because it's changing so rapidly that it's almost impossible to be any sort of expert in it. And I think this is sort of where we get into the more interesting parts of AI. I mean, we don't really know what processes or projects will exist in college by the time the class of 24 or the class of 25 gets to college. We don't really know what their professional work lives will look like in 3 or 4 years. We don't know what digital portfolio we need to help them build. We don't know what terms of skills and literacy, what they need to have. And for a number of students, this is a challenge, and for a lot of faculty, it's a challenge as well. To what extent should Lawrenceville, as an educational institution, embrace this technology? We don't want to get left behind, but on the other hand, we don't want to go so far out on this technological path that we have issues of copyright or data privacy, or ethics. And so this is sort of one of the key issues. I want to jump to just a student perspective for a minute. If you're a student at Lawrenceville today, you are probably using one, some, or many of these AIs. Some of these are just a digital version of what a lot of us used years ago. I personally, Cliff Notes, I had the little books, the yellow and black books that you would get if you didn't read Shakespeare and you wanted a quick summary of it. It's just now much easier to get it. And so these are some tools that are out there readily available. Some of them are free, some of them have costs. And I think for a number of students, this provides two things. Number one, it may provide a shortcut to learning, which we don't want. And number two, it may provide assistance with learning, which we do want. And so for students, they're navigating to what extent can they use AI, what constitutes academic dishonesty, and they're facing a number of other challenges. These are some quotes from students in our AI committee where they were responding to, what are you afraid of with AI? And I was particularly enthused by this because I felt that for a lot of our students, this is what we want them to be asking. We want them to be aware of the importance of learning. We want them to be a little bit scared about the corporatization of AI. We want them to think about skills that are essential to develop before you use AI. And we want them to value the creation of unique work. And so that students themselves saw these as challenges, to me is very gratifying for what it means to be a student at Lawrenceville today. This is exactly the type of questions that we would hope our students are exploring. Here's a few more comments from students. And where we'd like to focus is sort of on that bottom quote, where students need to learn how to use it effectively. Other issues that students are facing is there is at this point some, it's not very clear always for students exactly what constitutes academic dishonesty. And that's a concern because everybody sort of lives in fear of getting a major rules violation. So if you use AI to write your thesis, but not your topic sentences, is that cheating? I think we all know what definitely cheating is and definitely not cheating is. If you use AI to write your whole research paper, obviously academic dishonesty. If you don't use AI to write any part of it, you're obviously fine. But it's all the areas in the middle that really challenge our students. If you use it to help find one source, if you use it to help find 3 sources, at what point does it cross a line to where it is actually academic dishonesty and not just getting assistance with a project? What if you use AI to look at your thesis? How is that different than having the person, this faculty member on duty that night looking at your paper? And so these are key issues for students, and we are still, like many institutions of higher learning, grappling with these on a day-to-day basis and across departments. And we're working to get more consistency for students, but it's difficult sometimes to know exactly where those boundaries are. So a quick look at faculty. I think if there was a theme song for students when AI came out, it would probably be, and I'm dating myself here, there was a song from Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd called We Don't Need No Education. That would be like a student theme song with this. They're like, nope, I can do it myself with AI. If we had to come up with a faculty theme song about AI, it would probably be REM's It's the End of the World as We Know It. Because for faculty, this is very alarming. How have faculty responded? The biggest challenge is determining whether or not a student is actually submitting their own work or work that has been augmented or changed or written by AI. In order to do this, we are doing more pen and paper assessments in class. We're using a tool called DigiExam, which is basically a lockdown browser. We're using DraftBack, which is a Chrome extension that you can look at a Google Doc to look at the history of it, and it tracks all the keystrokes in real time. We are really looking at how we instruct and assess students, and maybe doing fewer things outside of class and more things inside of class. One of the biggest challenges that we've had on campus as faculty is using AI detection software because it can be very problematic. In particular, we've been using Turnitin. And so when a student submits work into the Canvas learning management system, they submit an assignment. It goes through a Turnitin check, which is, it used to look for plagiarism, but now it looks for plagiarism and AI. There are some recent studies that show that really those detectors, when they're confronted with machine-generated content, especially content that's been modified, they are very low in terms of accuracy rates. Probably around and those accuracy rates decline by probably an additional 20% when faced with content that's been manipulated or partially manipulated. A lot of the detectors will penalize English language that's been written by students for whom English is not their native language. So it disproportionately targets some of our foreign students. And Turnitin is a very widely used platform, but really it's low ranking in terms of accuracy in detecting AI generated text. And when I say low accuracy rates, that means the accuracy rates are probably going to be in like the 39–40% range. And so this is a problem that faculty are starting to address and trying to figure out if these AI detection tools really are the best way to assess authorship of student writing. At the same time, there's a lot of opportunities for faculty. We can now really, if students are getting more help with some of the basics of writing, we can now work on developing some of what the World Economic Forum has called the soft skills, which are in huge demand in the next 10 to 15 years, based upon their recent study. And this would be skills that are valuable for jobs, but they're not necessarily based upon the writing. It's interpersonal relationships, how you make connections with other people, how creative you are, whether or not you solve problems. And so for some of these now, for faculty, it provides a really interesting opportunity for us to target development of different skills than we might have focused on before. There are some great teachers on campus who are doing remarkable things in their classroom. I do want to give a quick shout out to Ilana Sachs in the science department, to Nikki Solin in science, to Laura Naboa Berman in history, There's a number of teachers who are really starting to embrace and use tools in ways that augment learning without replacing learning. But there are a lot of questions with faculty still that remain. How should we be able to use AI? Should we use it to grade papers? Should we use it to write comments? Should we use it to write interims? Should we use it to write emails? Does everybody have to be on the same page with it? Because we have a vast gap between teachers that are embracing it and teachers that are still reluctant to think about it. And so one of the things that we have to start to really look at on campus is that any new technology tends to amplify the best teachers and more exposed teachers whose skills might be a little bit subpar. And so we have to really be very careful with having the discussions here that are not based upon sort of panic or fear, but based upon and centered in growth, professional growth of our faculty. And I think thinking about sort of where teachers might go with this, we are doing more training in the June in-service on campus and then in summer institutes as well, starting to look at really what are the best ways for faculty to incorporate this and how are those best serving our students in terms of instruction and assessment. So the last little section here that I want to talk about, and then we'll move to some questions and get our Jonathan to talk a little bit about what he's done, so you can see a specific case study on campus, is kind of where we're going with AI at Lawrenceville. We formed a committee. It doesn't meet as often as I would like because we end up doing a whole lot of other things, but there's students, faculty, staff, especially some staff from the library, from Bunn Library, and alumni as well have been pretty active. We've met with different departments on campus to try to see how we could better use the data that's been collected and create models that might help automate certain processes and really increase the efficacy of both faculty and staff across the campus. We have students attending a conference this week on ethical AI in New York City. We have, at today's count, 5 separate senior projects, 2 independent studies of students that are obviously fifth formers that are now working to look at ways in which we can incorporate AI on campus. Some of those, and I'll just give a quick shout out to Dylan Singla, Jane Rubenstein, Roscoe Hewer, Ani Parr, Natalie Moore, Lena Heffley, Max Balchev, and Jonathan Yang, in addition, Satvik Samant and Aslan Aksu. So we have, that's just a quick summary of students that are starting to do specific things on campus. And Jonathan is going to talk about that in just a minute. We also developed an AI applications and ethics class that's being taught right now on the Lawrenceville campus. It was very well subscribed. It's a full class. It has a variety of students ranging from juniors all the way up to PGs, postgrads that are looking at the ethics of AI. Everything from deep fakes to manipulated content to copyright issues, data privacy, military uses of AI. So that class has been really fascinating to be a part of. And we have some teachers that are not teaching it, but that are coming to observe as well. So we're trying to really expand discussions of AI and ethics across campus. We are developing, Bernadette Thiele has been instrumental, and Emily Kosoff in developing a capstone course for 24-25, which, as most of you know, is an interdisciplinary effort that covers a number of different departments, and it really targets a key issue. So the key issue for 24-25 is going to be artificial intelligence. And we are working actively to develop a list of speakers for that. As you can imagine, that changes almost weekly, but we're hoping to have a really cutting edge capstone course for our students in 24-25. And we are working collaboratively with the library to make sure that we are not violating copyright laws or privacy issues in terms of having students use AI to access databases that are paid and then creating new content. In other words, the layers of copyright are a concern for us, and we're really working carefully with our fabulous staff at Bunn Library to make sure that we are adhering to all the norms and both specific legal and ethical issues associated with that. We are looking, as I mentioned, at things all over campus that we could start to use AI to help with. Maybe it's planning, maybe it's student days, discovery days when they come to campus. Maybe it's something to do with sports management and injury prevention, sustainable fare. There's some projects happening there about menu creation and automating our catering process. There's some talk about maximizing crop production, using AI to maximize crop production at the Big Red Farm. And so one of the more exciting things is that students are starting to come now to say, hey, I have this idea. Is there some way we could use this? And so this is sort of a list of beyond the classroom, what we're doing at Lawrenceville. I don't know any other high school in the country that's doing this. We have done a presentation to the 8 Schools Association, and they were very enthused. Andover wants to work with us closely. And then Andover recommended recently that we start to collaborate with the Center for Tech Innovation and Learning at Eton College in the UK. And so they have reached out to Lawrenceville to see if we have any collaboration opportunities for our students to try and do some real world practical applications in terms of AI. And I think the goal is sort of like it's what's the art of the possible rather than what could possibly go wrong. It's what could we do that's real and purposeful for our students that keeps the learning relevant and allows them to explore and actually create things with AI rather than just being a consumer of AI generated content, but they are the ones that are actually starting now to do things that enhance their own experience and learning with it and hopefully contribute to a more technologically advanced campus in a lot of different ways. We have students that are working really to help develop and test use cases on campus. What we're looking at is kind of mirroring the way AI products are evaluated and implemented in corporate environments and to create some, like I said, real and purposeful opportunities for students so that Lawrenceville could potentially become a center for AI innovation. We are poised to do so. New Jersey is poised to do so. We have some great partnering opportunities with Princeton. And so in terms of where we'd like to go 6 months from now, if I do this presentation again, I would like to be able to talk about even more exciting things that our students are doing to really utilize AI in positive and productive ways. One of the students that's doing that is Jonathan Yang. And Jonathan is here to talk for a few minutes about what he is doing on campus. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And so you can see Jonathan, I believe, is there. And
Yeah.
he's going to share his screen. Excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan Yang, class of 2025 at Lawrenceville. And Jonathan is not doing any of this. I think it's important to point out he's not getting credit for it. It's not a course. It's not an independent study. Jonathan is doing this sort of in his spare time at Lawrenceville. For those of you that have been through Lawrenceville, you understand that spare time is exceedingly limited. And so we're really grateful that we have some students like this who are pushing the envelope. So I will turn off my mic and turn it over to Jonathan Yang.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Parnell. So I guess what I've been doing at Lawrenceville is between the Big Data and AI Research Club and the AI Council, as Ms. Parnell mentioned. So I guess to start with the Big Data and AI Club, each year we look into environmental justice issues, social economic issues through a machine learning lens. And last year we looked into PFAS contamination, which is a water pollutant, and how that affected communities of lower socioeconomic levels across the US. And I helped develop a machine learning model to kind of predict those high exposure areas. And we managed to get published in the International Research Journal of Public and Environmental Health. So that was really exciting. And I guess recently I've been working with the math department, looking into how students can, how I can automate like the placement of students into their respective classes. So currently, what's being done is Mr. Bayona, who is the head of the math department, he gets around, I want to say, 200 something incoming students every year where he needs to place them into their respective classes. And I've helped him develop a random forest classifier model to kind of look at test scores, placement test scores, and look into how that can help predict what classes students should be placed into. And I've also worked with the public safety department and looking into high risk areas on campus, and I also help them with kind of their scheduling, um, their like shift scheduling kind of situation. And I think what's really good about, or what's kind of exciting about the AI Council is that it lets students kind of get a hands-on experience and a look into like the practical applications of artificial intelligence, and we're mainly focused on supervised learning. So that's you kind of have to guide the machine learning models more, but this is still, I guess, a great step into the ever expanding field of artificial intelligence. And um, I think next year, or maybe later this year, um, we'll see more opportunities. Yeah, with the AI Council.
Thanks, Jonathan. He's being very humble. He actually is the one of the few people on campus that I reach out to say, hey, I have this project. Do you think you could do it? And he's always like, yep, I think I could do that. And so as a Lawrenceville student, I know the pressures and the time management issues. And so I've been really grateful. We have a couple of other students that are starting to look at helping the foreign language department move to the new schedule and how AI could help with natural language conversations. We have some students working with Sustainable Fare, our dining services, to both optimize schedule, look at availability for menus, and then automate the catering process on campus. We have a couple of students that are working closely with Alumni Development and starting to move into finance to see if there are ways in which planned giving and Alumni and Development could start to incorporate artificial intelligence. So we have some great, real, purposeful projects on campus that are allowing students really to develop their skills while at high school, but also with one foot in the real world, which
Mhm.
at least for me, I find that really, really exciting in high school
Yeah.
that we have that opportunity.
Um,
Go ahead.
I see some questions. Should I answer them now, or do I wait till the end?
Yeah, Jonathan, it looks like there's one that's specifically about what you're doing from
Mhm.
Latif Alum. The question, and I'll just read it for those who are in attendance. Latif would like to know, can you talk about how you're planning to host the class placement service and the costs associated with it? Are you buying GPUs for campus use, or is this a cloud-based service?
So currently, so with model development, the last stage is model deployment, and that's making it accessible to the public or accessible to other people. And so right now, the model I've been developing is on my the files are on my computer, and I've shared them with Mr. Bayona because he's the only one that's been using them. So model deployment isn't currently kind of something we're looking into. But I guess further down the line, if this software or this model becomes more refined, we would probably look into cloud-based services, just because that is kind of like the go-to route these days. And I think looking into, I guess we would probably have to set up back end, front end, and kind of web servers. Probably use AWS and that kind of thing. But um, with the costs, I'm not really sure. But yeah, I guess going down the line, we'll have to see.
I was going to say we've had some discussions. Latif has reached out last year after an alumni presentation And I think there's some real opportunities for alumni and students to work together and to have some of these opportunities funded. And so Latif and I talked last week, I think it was, and we can continue to talk more because at least for me, it's really fascinating to have students see alumni working, especially, 10 years out, that type of thing, especially someone with an MIT education now, that really allows us to have students see the possibilities for, undergraduate work, graduate work, and then corporate work. So very exciting stuff, and hoping to connect more alumni with other students that are here. So Jonathan actually has another little thing. There's another question coming in. Can you explain more about the use of machine language for the contamination project? Did it predict patterns of suspected contamination?
Yeah, so what we looked at was like um we had we used socioeconomic features, which was like low income rate, a minority rate, less than high school education rate, and we used that to predict the how many proximal PFAS facilities there were to that area. And so basically we identified like locations across, like, I think it was, yeah, we used cities across the US and looked into which of those cities would have the greatest risk of having proximal PFAS facilities or high levels of PFAS exposure. And should I link the paper in the chat? I think that would be
That would
helpful.
be great.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Jonathan.
Mhm.
I think one question that came in that I think is very relevant to what we're talking about is how can alumni get involved in helping with this? You've kind of touched on it, but I'll have to say from my seat, please email us in the alumni office and we will put you in touch with Jen and then we'll figure out the best way. We would love to connect people on this. Go
Yeah.
through us, send us an email, and I'll put my information in the chat as well.
And definitely reach out in terms of sort of if you have expertise in a particular area, or if you might even anything just as simple as a conversation with students about a potential career in this area. We would love to perhaps have some Lawrenceville alums be part of the capstone class, the capstone course next year, where you could then say, this is what we've done 10 years out of Lawrenceville, 5 years out of Lawrenceville. And that's exactly the type of expertise that we're looking for in the capstone class. And to have that come from a Lawrenceville speaker as opposed to just an external speaker would be that much more meaningful to the students and to the faculty.
See, another question is, you've kind of touched on this, Jen, but how has the curriculum evolved to help students become responsible adopters of AI to solve the world's growing problems?
So that's easy. We'll have that done by next week. Yeah, the world's growing problems. I think that we've started to work on a couple of different areas. We're looking specifically at helping sort of students when they first come into school and having it be part of orientation. Is what is responsible AI use? What does that look like? What are limitations? And that's something that's evolving over time as the technology evolves. So we start right when students get here. We've also talked about this idea of having a more expansive capstone class next year, or maybe an AI applications course that runs through a couple of different terms so we can touch on AI transportation, AI resource use, AI and climate change, AI and finance, AI and manufacturing. And so that would allow students to have a much broader exploration of some of these topics. We're still working to develop that and find a place for it within the curriculum. The ethics class currently lives in the religion department, AI applications and ethics, because a lot of the questions tend to be ethically, that's sort of the focus that we wanted for that. We wanted an ethics-based course. And for a lot of students, that helps them fulfill a religion requirement for graduation, which has been very helpful for our students. But next year, we're looking more at the interdisciplinary focus for curriculum. I think this is what a lot of schools are struggling with, is how to incorporate it into the curriculum on a daily basis. We're hoping to provide more detailed instruction for faculty as we go into the summer as to how they could start to include AI in their specific assessments and within instruction, so that students get practical experience working with AI and it doesn't become something that's punitive between a faculty and student, but something where it's more of a collaborative learning experience. One of the things that's great, at least that I found, is anytime you say, oh, there's an AI that can do this, somewhere out there, there's a student that knows more about it than I do. Absolutely. And those discussions are the best, because then we're all learning at the same time and we're presenting. Lawrenceville becomes a community of learners rather than a punitive where it's students trying to cheat and teachers trying to catch them. We're really trying to move away from that model altogether. The issue is that there's not that many great examples out there about what other schools are doing. So we're developing it kind of on our own. That's why the collaboration with Andover and the collaboration with Eaton will hopefully prove very fruitful in this department. Jonathan, you have a question too?
Oh, is there a question for?
Oh, I can share one. Jenna, I was going to say, I think the reason there's not a model is because you're on the cutting edge of this in the secondary school world. I think hopefully
Hoping.
this will be the model.
We're hoping to be the model. We've been invited to speak at a number of different conferences and a number of different meetings with other schools. We've presented at the New Jersey Association of Independent Schools. We presented at the Conference for Innovation and Technology. We've presented with College Board. We do a lot of consulting with them in terms of incorporation of AI. And so we're trying to get involved on a number of different levels. The challenge with that is that it grows exponentially. And so we really welcome, like I said, alumni assistance in this, especially people that are working in the field right now. It would be great to sort of start to connect students so those relationships can be formed while the kids are still in high school.
So another question, can you speak, this is from Bridge Stewart, can you speak to the need for hardware advances to help with the advances in AI? It seems one seems to beget the other.
Who is that, towards Jonathan or towards myself?
Either one, whoever's able to answer.
I think one of the biggest issues will be getting GPUs if we're going to be running larger models or developing larger models. We don't have the processing capability. But I think if we start to do some collaborative work with alumni or with other institutions, we might be able to get more funding for that. And so that would be the goal. But it's not cheap.
See, another question, it seems, this is from Rob Wyman. It seems like many of the uses you are describing are connected to creating projects or creating products or solving problems. Are you having people use AI as a thought partner rather than as a co-producer? For example, AI as another participant in a discussion in class, etc.
I definitely am doing that in my Honors Gov class. So I teach 2 sections of Honors Gov, which is mostly seniors. It's a 500 level class, and they are specifically told to go home and use specific AIs. Someone uses Gemini, someone uses Copilot, someone uses ChatGPT. The idea is that they're starting to be able to make decisions and evaluate which one might be more useful for specific problems. And it's almost as if it's another student around the Harkness table. So please review this, please summarize the key points, and please create 3 to 5 discussion questions that you think would be helpful. And then in class, the students all bring in their AI's response, and we have a discussion about sort of the quality of the questions based upon Bloom's taxonomy. So we start to look for those more deeper probing questions that are not sort of simplistic, easy to answer, but the ones that really engender debates around the Harkness table. And what we found is the students love jumping to that level of learning. You trading off a little bit that the students are developing those questions on their own, but at the same time, we're also getting AI to almost be a participant in the class and say, how do you react to this material? What would you say? How would you like to see a discussion progress? And a lot of kids say it's like having a really smart roommate. It's like having someone else that's there that can jump into discussions with things. And some of them get pretty attached to whatever AI that they've used for homework. They're like, no, mine is better. Mine did a really good job of this. And it's almost like they're defending a friend around the Harkness table. So it's been pretty entertaining sometimes. But that's one way in which we've started to use it a little bit more specifically as a learning partner. Or students are starting to use it more as a Socratic tutor for specific assignments as well. Because the problem is if you rely too much on it, when you have an assessment in class, you're going to fail that assessment. So, so there's a balance for students that they learn very quickly. If there's an over reliance on the tools, then they can't actually meet the assessment requirements. And so starting to use AI almost as a thought partner, but really as a Socratic tutor, has been very effective in both the math, I would say science and language departments.
Great. We have a question for Jonathan. Can you talk about what topics in AI you'd be most excited to learn but are hard to explore, or projects you want to pursue but you don't have the resources right now?
Yeah, so I guess just a little bit of context about also like some other things I've done with AI. So recently I had an internship with Cosmos ID, which is a bioinformatics company, and I helped them develop a model to predict a DNA sample type, like determining whether it was an oral sample, a mouth swab, a or a fecal sample, and that kind of thing. And I think looking into the future, what I would want to pursue or kind of explore would be, I guess, like time series analysis, using machine learning and time series analysis, or looking into um, large language models and unsupervised learning. I think that's something I've yet to fully kind of master, um, and I think also reinforcement learning, looking into like autonomous driving. I follow Andrej Karpathy. He works at OpenAI. He used to work at Tesla for their autonomous driving algorithms, and I think that is something that's super cool. But of course, something that is also, I guess, requires a lot of computer power, a lot of more math for me, data sets, and that kind of thing. But yeah, so probably in the long term future.
Great. And let's see, does the school have an official policy in the student handbook so that we have a
Yes.
baseline of what's considered honest use versus academic dishonesty?
We have a basic policy that was put into place by the Dean of Academics, Allison Easterling, last year. I think it was put in there by January or February, so we were one of the first schools to establish a policy. I will preface this by saying that about half the universities, the top 100 universities, don't really have any policy at all. It's just based upon individual teachers and what they would like to do in their classrooms. What we're starting to see is more of a refinement of that across different departments. So I've had the great honor of meeting with like the English department or the foreign language department or the religion department to say, what are you guys doing with AI and what type of policy? What specific structures do you need to put into place so that it's predictable for students and that there's clear guidelines? And they're working to develop those things. I wouldn't say that they're completely developed yet, but the school's overall policy is that AI is not something that is generally permitted for student work unless the teacher has specifically authorized it. And so the students are still expected to learn the way that they've always learned, and that is, uh, you know, sort of using their own brains to think about things and not relying on AI. But as teachers are getting a little bit more comfortable with some of the tools and exploring ways in which it can augment but not replace learning, then those are starting to filter into different courses with different students. The vast majority of those are for upperclassmen, for upper formers, not underformers. For fourth and fifth formers, because there is generally this idea that AI is something that you can start to use after you've already learned how to read and write very well, after you can interpret text on yourself, after you can go out and do research, after you can go out and formulate a thesis statement. So there's still a number of essential skills that we feel are an integral part of the Lawrenceville education that should not be bypassed. And that is coming from the Dean of Academics, the Dean of Faculty, the Dean of Students, generally that, and department chairs, that we're not moving completely towards this technology, but we're starting to see specific use cases and proof points and maybe some sort of technological tiny gems within classrooms that might allow students to start to explore this in a more responsible way.
Jen, this next question kind of builds on that. It's a follow-up question. what's your point of view on what younger students should be prepared for? Like what's developmentally appropriate? Should middle school and elementary not have access to AI and just focus on traditional methods and learn it in high school? Should there be AI readiness in middle school? Like where do you start?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's the big question is like, what are the essential elements of education now? That's one of the reasons this is such a paradigm shift, and it's such an exciting time because we get a chance to reimagine education in ways that we haven't looked at in ever really in education. We started with a particular model and we've kept that model for basically a century or more. And so this does allow us to really start to think about what things do students need to know, how do they need to know how to do that, how do they express that they know it. And one of the things that we are starting to move towards, at least at the high school level, is how can you show what you know in different ways than maybe traditionally. So if you've in the past just written a research paper, and AI can do that now, and you use AI and we can't detect it, and we're not going to go through that policing mentality, it may now become that with students, we sit down and say, at least at the high school level, so tell me about this research paper that you wrote. Tell me about this one source. It almost becomes based on like on an Oxford defense. How would your argument change in this particular analysis of World War I nationalism if this particular source were removed from your paper? And that's where you really get to see what a student knows. And you can start to see the gaps. And that part is exciting because then it forces them to really do a deeper dive into what AI might have provided for them, but they still need to really understand it. In terms of at what age you start that, that's a fascinating question. I taught elementary school for years, and I think if I was teaching middle school right now, oh my gosh, it would be, we are grappling with these issues with students that already know how to write, that already know how to do research. We haven't yet seen the AI generation come through Lawrenceville that maybe doesn't have those skills. And so any suggestions on how we should deal with that would be welcome. we would be happy to have those discussions with anyone who has great solutions, because I think it's going to be a challenge.
Thank you, Jen. We are just about out of time. So I want to give, if either of you have any final thoughts you'd like to share on this topic. This has been fascinating.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in. And we look forward to more collaboration with alumni, because people that are out there in the world, that's what we want to tap into.
Do you think I should leave my email in the chat for?
You know what, Jonathan, we will put you in touch directly with anyone. We'll take care of that. We did have one question. Is there a chance that alums could audit the AI course? It sounds like people love it. And that certainly gives our office some creative thinking to do on how we can open up this learning to the alumni community as well in an appropriate and useful way.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I
Yeah.
think that would be really interesting.
But certainly, please, if you have experience in this field, if you're interested in getting involved in the work that Jen and her students are doing, please email me and Jen so that we can figure out the best way forward. We always appreciate the talents and contributions of our alums. So Jen and Jonathan, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I think we would all agree you guys are on the cutting edge of this and pushing forward stuff that's really going to change learning in a big way. So thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for your time. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you. Jonathan, good luck this afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.